All right, it looks like the stream is kicking off, and we are going to go live in a second here. So as people are filing in, it's always good to see people on the stream saying hello. I'm waiting for YouTube itself to start spitting out audio on my own stream. All right, it looks like the stream is kicking off. And it is doing that, which is very, very cool. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I don't know. Hello, my name's Howard. I'm here. I'm here with Thais Pedroso. She's a product manager at Vicasso. Thais, say hello to everybody.
Hello, welcome. It's nice to be here.
Yes. Hopefully we're not getting too much weird echoes. I had to mute my iPad so that I could make sure that all the audio is working. If everyone in the chat could just say you can hear me and you can hear Thais, that would be great, just so that we know that that is definitely working. This is the time when we're waiting, so.
Don't be shy.
Ooh, I have some echo, I think. Hang on. Hopefully that fixes things, and I shouldn't have any more echo.
Don't be shy.
Cool. So I think we have some of the audio gremlins worked out. Definitely had a fair share of issues. Hopefully the echo has gone away at this point, and we are good to go. So with that, I'm going to say hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Howard Yermish. I'm the Director of Product here at Vicasso. I have with me Thais Pedroso, Product Manager at Vicasso. To get things started off on this live stream, I want to make it very clear. It's a Salesforce kind of thing, so we're always going to have a forward-looking statement slide. So hopefully that all works. And you understand that we might show you some things that aren't quite released yet. We are also working in one of our developer one of our demonstration orgs, and we might show you some things that you're like, wait a second, I didn't know this other product of yours did this thing. Feel free to ask us about that in the chat. I'm going to try to monitor the chat a little bit. We've got some fun surprises. We've got some audience interaction where we're going to ask you to give Slaybot a little bit of a workout, but let me go through the overall agenda. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to quickly review how FileSlayer works and how Slaybot works with FileSlayer so that there's a real clear understanding. Thais is going to do a nice, good demonstration of how Slaybot works and, all the things that we need to do to make sure that Slaybot is doing its thing as best as possible. From there, we're going to talk to one of our lead developers at Vicasso, Bill Surgent, who arguably, if Slaybot took a paternity test, Slaybot would look at Bill and say, "You are my father," which I think will be really, really great. We're going to talk a little bit about how Slaybot came to be and different kinds of things. And then we're going to answer questions, and we'll talk about pricing and availability. Spoiler alert, if you're already a customer, Slaybot's included. So hooray for that, which we love. So I'm just doing a little quick, let's look through the chat. Everything looks like everything's all fixed and working and ready to go. So hang on a second. I'm going to do a little cough. And we should be back now. This is the wonders of live reality. So, all right. Love to see all these people in the chat. This is pretty great. Let's start off with just how FileSlayer works. So this is relatively straightforward. Think about it this way. In the component, when FileSlayer sees these different images under 100K or wherever you're set, sees the social icons, gives you a little preview of that in the component, and then user, someone working the case or looking at whatever object that is, clicks the button that says remove and add to hit list. When they click that button, what FileSlayer does is it takes that image and it adds it to a list of documents hashing that image, so that if another email comes into the org that has those same images, FileSlayer can look at those images when they first come in and say, oh, I recognize those images. I see that hash, and automatically slays them. And the reason I want to go over that is because Slaybot does exactly what an end user does inside the component. So once again, imagine, if you will, The component is running on the page, and there's a lot of images that have just shown up. And instead of the end user having to click individual images and saying add to hit list or keep this image, what we're going to do is we're going to let Slaybot do this job. So Slaybot's going to look at all those images and is going to say, you don't need these. And the ones that it doesn't need, with high confidence, it's going to take those and it's going to add them to that. It's going to create the hashes, add them to that hit list so that future versions of that image won't show up again. So what's really cool about that is all of the features of FileSlayer that work when humans do things. When humans add things to the hit list, those images will no longer appear. Slaybot's helping the humans with this. So we program Slaybot so that its job is to help us. So what I want to do is I want to switch over and I'm going to let Thais do a demonstration. So right now you should be looking at Thais' screen, and Thais, take it away. Talk to us about how show us Slaybot in action here.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm here looking at the switchboard. I'm just going to open up one of these cases and just wait for the component to load and see what happens. So Slaybot is going to fire every time that the component is on the page and it loads for the first time. It might take 1 or 2 seconds, so we'll just see what happens here. I guess that is the fun of a live demo.
And in the demo org, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot for Slaybot to work through there.
Yeah. We have tons of attachments here, so it should start doing its thing pretty soon. Yeah, fingers crossed.
This is the challenge of doing a live demo. The anticipation.
I know. Like, I'm eager to refresh the page now, see what's going to happen.
So many images. All right, let's go. Let's do a different case. Let's do a case with only a couple of images attached. I think we may have forced it.
Okay. Let me open this one and see what's going to happen. There it is.
There we go.
It's recognizing those social media icons and it is slaying them automatically.
All right. I think this is one of those things that when you refresh all the data in an org, the first time it gets a little bit squirrely. Let's look at another case. Let's just repeat the exercise and see if it's going to do its job, and it's going to do it relatively quickly. This one has a ton of images on it.
It does.
So it's going to go through. Look at all that.
Wow.
All right. Let's see if it's doing its thing. There it
It
goes.
started. It's doing it.
All right. So the answer is always when you have a nice fresh org, the first one that someone looks at is probably going to be a little bit slow, but then everything's going to kick itself off. What's really, really cool about this is all of those images have gotten added to the internal hit list. So if they were to show up again in a subsequent email, you weren't waiting for an end user to look at the component and say, oh, that's right, I should get rid of these. Slaybot is doing math, basically making a calculation saying, I think I can remove all these, and adding them to the hit list. Now, I feel like this demo, we could raise the stakes a little bit. So what I'm actually thinking that we do while it's slaying all these other images, and I know this might be really, really crazy, but I want to open this up to everybody who's currently on the live stream. What I want you to do is find some social icons, little things that you expect Slaybot to slay, even, a little picture that you would expect Slaybot not to slay, to skip. And let's send them in. I will tell you that this is a demo org that we reset all the data. We're not going to use any of this data. Anything that you send in, we're just going to delete. We're not using any email addresses, anything personal or whatever. That's not going to go to any marketing purposes or anything like that. This is just an easy way for you to throw images at Slaybot and make sure that everything's working fine. So it is your turn to test. Send an email to slaybot.test@vicasso.com. Also, to let you know while that's happening, what I want to do is I kind of want to go through a little bit of the setup experience, Thais. Let's sort of go back in and talk about how things are set up. So let me switch back over to your screen there.
Yeah, so to use Slaybot, you would need to go to the Files Layer Setup Wizard, and you're going to see that we have a Slaybot tab. You would just need to enable it from here. That is the main thing to do. And then on whatever page layout that you have our component, you would then also enable Slaybot from there. So you can have Slaybot working for some people in the organization and not for others. So you can customize it that way too.
And because it's done both in the setup, in the product setup itself, it's sort of, there's this master switch, turn it on, and per page layout. If you have some teams where you're like, this happens all the time, we want to aggressively slay from there, great. If you have other teams where you're like, we don't really see that problem, we don't want Slaybot to be running on that, you can have that disabled on their page layouts. It's a really nice way to kind of give you the ability for some teams to work with it, or others, or even if you want to just pilot it, you could have a team who has a page layout that's piloting the experience to see how well they do with it, and move on from there. So there's a question in the chat, which I'll answer really quickly, which is from Philippe, which is, in my industry, many customers put their signature in an image. So my users sometimes want to keep it. Will Slaybot slay it? Well, if it's a social icon and it looks like that and Slaybot wants to get it, yes, Slaybot will slay it as it comes in. If you do want to keep it, Thais, can you show how someone can recover an image? So let's go back to one of those
Of course.
cases.
Yeah.
And if you slay something, you're like, no, I want to keep this particular one.
Yeah, and you can actually stop Slaybot as it is doing its work just by clicking that halt Slaybot. But if it did remove that image, you would just come here in the component on the recover images section, just expand it, and then you can just click on the recover button. Just as a reminder, you have 15 days. That is the Salesforce recycle bin policy for you to recover the image from here.
Awesome. So it sounds like even in this particular scenario, if there are particular ones that you're like, no, 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 I want to keep those signature images because that would make a lot of sense for me, then you can absolutely do that. No worries there. So
Yep.
what I'd like to do now, as we're sort of working through this, is I want to bring in a special guest. And the special guest that I want to bring in is Bill. And so what I'm going to do is, let me just talk effusively about how much I love Bill. So Bill is here. Bill, oh my goodness. Bill has over 9 years of experience at Vicasso. He was one of those nice welcoming faces when I first got to Vicasso. He's a lead developer on our R&D team. He's worked on some of the most complicated parts of our apps, probably worked on every single one of our apps at this point. Basically, if it's a heavy, complicated lift, Bill is probably going to be involved in some way. What's great is, in addition to being a really brilliant engineer, he's a great collaborator and a great mentor. I know so many of the people who have worked with Bill, and the way he teaches, and he's just generous in all these different ways. And as I mentioned before, if you ever wanted to meet Slaybot's father, this is Bill Surgent. Bill, welcome to the live stream.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thank you, Howard. That was a wonderful introduction.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome. So the obvious question, Bill, is how does Slaybot do its magic?
Yeah, so basically, for a while, we've been sort of wanting to make Slaybot, or I'm sorry, Signature Slayer, a little bit more hands-off. So it kind of started at, we have these innovation days, and the idea is we just want to explore how we could sort of have the product automatically detect these images. So we set out to look into the new Einstein stuff and image classification. So we put together a quick demo, and honestly, initially, I didn't think it was going to work because it's like classifying images, but it turns out if you give it a lot of logos and then everything that you don't want to slay, it seems overwhelming, but okay, the entire world versus just the logos, right? So what was it, Felipe, if I pronounced that correctly, was saying about the signatures. I got hundreds of images that were just signatures that I trained in the keep set. So I made sure to be as broad as possible, but in general, it's pretty much just going to slay what kind of looks like a logo.
And
And it kind of
something that
worked.
it did. And I remember when you and I were started playing with this at the beginning, there was a lot of like, all right, if it looks like a logo, but that logo is photographic, we're going to make it not as confident. And we didn't want people to be slayed. So for example, we did this whole thing where we were throwing Bitmoji images at it saying, don't slay the Bitmojis because those didn't feel like logos. There was also a situation I remember where I sent you a logo and then a screenshot with that logo and part of a screenshot and then a screenshot of the screenshot and the logo. Like we were doing all kinds of different iterations to see kind of like basically where the training needed to happen. So, I know that we threw a lot of images at it, but what were some of the things that you did to make it not slay an image? Like what kinds of things did you train it with so that it wouldn't slay those images?
Yeah, so mainly it was just getting enough counterexamples so that it wouldn't be overconfident that like everything's a logo. So like the Bitmoji one was a great example. Like, hey, it's solid colors, it's very basic. It's like, oh, that's a logo. So we actually did, while we were training it, I actually wrote some scripts to scrape Google Images and various websites. And so one thing I did is I Googled like Bitmojis and I got like hundreds of images to be like, hey, Slaybot, definitely keep these, and all the important stuff like pictures of cats and dogs, like, we don't want to get rid of those. So
no.
So we did the best that we could through trial and error and through cleverness, like Howard's nested image there, and my manager was breaking it. It was just kind of iterative, and we got better and better as we went.
Now, something that I always keep to heart is all of our products are native. And intuitively, a lot of artificial intelligence and a lot of these training models are typically, they're hosted somewhere. They're third-party models. They're things where it's like, oh, we have this service that we have to call out to. We had to make a compromise to kind of make this work. Bill, can you talk a little bit about what we did with our model so that we could stay native and not do any third-party call outs or anything like that?
Yep. Yeah, so basically what the approach we took is we wound up actually, so we didn't want to like package every logo in existence, right? So we're using a model. So in a way, I kind of said this as a joke to Howard a week back. We packaged the consciousness of Slaybot with the product. Don't worry, it's not sentient. But so the thing is that it's basically pre-trained. So it's not really adapting to new images per se, but it should be able to pick up images that it hasn't seen before in general. But in general, like we might, if we encounter a lot of counterexamples over time, we could always, add to the model and make improvements.
And you and I talked about the concept of whenever we push an update to the product, we might do it's going to get the updated model. So anything that we learn from client feedback, from maybe some weird false positives or some false negatives, we're going to retrain the model so that the updated version gets that new model. And I know that's something where initially we were like, we would love it if like a client could train the model for their own particular purposes, but we had to kind of keep it, for lack of a better term, a doable task for the first release. So we opted to just say, we're going to package the model and we're going to update that model as we need to. So Bill, what's something that in this whole process that you learned that you think other people either building other apps or things where they're trying to use artificial intelligence, what's something that you learned about when you're building Slaybot that other developers or other admins might want to know about?
Yeah, sure thing. So one thing that I learned is that there's this tool called Google Teachable Machine that it's pretty great. It's like this website Google put up that you can literally just upload a bunch of images, define a classification for it, and just get training right away. And there's a library out there called ml5.js, ML5. I don't know if I pronounced that clear enough earlier. That it has a lot of different templates that you can use. One of them was the image classifier that can then take that teachable machine model and kind of get you going right out the gate really quickly. So that's just some fun stuff that you could play with if you're a developer.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
I love that. One of the things that I want to do, there's a couple questions in the chat. So Bill, I'm going to keep you on because I think one of these questions you might really like lean into the answer. And let me just sort of grab that. So one is, what's the difference between the hit list manager and Slaybot? Is this an updated version? Good question. This is different than the hit list manager. Think about the hit list manager that's the admin tool that traditionally, if you wanted to do a broader search across your org so that you weren't looking at an individual record, you were looking at all of the images that match the criteria that you set. And then you could slay those images and add to the hit list. That hit list manager is not using Slaybot yet. And I say Slaybot yet because this is where I hold up the forward-looking statement card. It is our plans that we're going to do an update to the hit list manager. We're going to do something kind of special with that. We've got some interesting ideas how we can make that job a lot more effective for our clients. But the idea is to bring that same technology to the hit list manager. We needed to be a little bit more responsible with that because theoretically you're more broadly slaying images. And so Slaybot would have a little more accountability and responsibility. And as we all know, with great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility. And we think Slaybot has some pretty great power. So we want to do it as responsible as possible. So the hit list manager is still the hit list manager. It's what you've been using. The individual record component, what end users would typically see, is where Slaybot is going to do its thing. So that's the first question. The second question here is, how does Slaybot do the confidence scoring? Do we need to slay logos to make it start recognizing them, or does it hash the information already from the hit list manager? Bill, how does Slaybot do confidence scoring?
Yeah, so basically it has we package the model built in with it, so you do not have to slay any images in order for it to start working. You could think of it like this. So everything that was already there in prior versions is still there. Slaybot is now a layer on top of everything that we built that kind of plays the role of the end user, where it's pre-trained to be intelligent enough to generally be able to figure out what should be kept or what should be slain.
That's perfect. That is perfect. All right, we're going to switch back. Thais, let's talk about some things in terms of setup experience. So let me switch back over here to the slides. Let's go over some of these really important things in terms of setup.
Yes, so prior to enabling Slaybot, you need to make sure that Lightning Web Security is also enabled in your org, and we highly recommend that you test that before enabling it to make sure that nothing is going to break. So be very careful with that, but that is a prerequisite for Slaybot. Then after that, you can enable it from the setup wizard, as I showed you before, and then on the Lightning component for each page layout that you want it to run on. And Slaybot is always going to run as soon as that component loads on the page. So it's very simple. You don't have to do anything else. And be aware that you can recover the images at any time. You're not going to lose anything. It's there for you to recover within 15 days.
Nice. Very nice. So let's actually switch back to the live org and let's see Slaybot do its thing. Hang on a second. Let me get ourselves back to the live demo. All right, we should now be seeing the live demo.
Awesome.
All right. It looks like we have a few tests there, don't we?
We have a case from Felipe that came in. So let's see
let's see how it does.
Yeah, and what happens. So we do see logos. Slaybot is already working. Yeah, so it recognized all of those images as logos. Amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's Slaybot, do your thing again. I love this. This is so much
Let's
so much
go
fun
to
this
the
way.
next one. This one here came from Frankie with 2 icons as well. Yep, recognized. Yeah, we don't want to keep those. Perfect.
Off to the races it goes.
Yes.
So I think about it this way. Let's do another one because these are fun. You just keep hitting them. One of the things that I really love about this, for many clients that we've talked to in the past, they would say, "Oh, our users didn't know that they were supposed to go in and slay images," and there was always this little bit of an adoption problem that if the end users didn't do the slaying, the job got passed to the admin. And the admin had to once a week or once a month go through and really do this good clean out job. Or even worse, they forgot about it. And then for months, they would have all these images sort of filling things up, and then they would go over on their storage. I think what's really interesting is that what Slaybot is going to do is it's going to say, I think I've got this for you. So the end users who might not have adopted it, you're kind of getting that almost like an automatic adoption in the tool. So it's sort of everybody helps each other. Slaybot helps the end users. Admins now are better set up for success. Some really, really good stuff that way. Cool. Oh, do we have one where Slaybot is not doing its thing here?
Yeah, so here you can see that these logos, they have a lot of white space all around, so Slaybot is not entirely sure, and we can kind of see what the score that was given for this image. So yeah, it only gave it a 96 point whatever number this is. So it's not a 99%. It's not very sure that it should be slayed, so it's keeping it.
Yeah, and it's fair to say for this initial release and for what we're doing, Slaybot's a little bit more conservative than we think it can be. And we, again, I'm going to forward-looking statement my life into jeopardy here. We had some ideas where we could allow our admins to nudge Slaybot to say, be a little more aggressive or be a little less aggressive. That's something that we still would like to do and we might do if it's necessary. So it is a good thing if you're wondering, why didn't this get slayed? We figured Slaybot would have recognized this. You can actually look at the file and you will look at the Slaybot confident, or I think, what is the field name there? Slaybot.
Let me open another one.
Yeah.
So we have some fields that come packaged and you can add that to the page layout. So we do the hash code of the image, the slay confidence for Slaybot, and then if Slaybot decided to keep or to slay that image.
Something that we're doing that I think it was a really smart engineering is we're basically saying this is what Slaybot would have done, which means if you tell it, I want to slay it, future versions, what we're thinking is that's a way of allowing you to adjust how sensitive or not sensitive. So the end user providing that feedback saying, oh, no, I meant you should have kept that image instead of slaying it, is kind of going to nudge how aggressive or conservative Slaybot would be on those images. So really, really great that way. Let me just double check. Cool. Let's just double check to see some other key questions. So let me are there other cases there that we can give it, like, let's give one more try and then we'll talk and address some key
Yeah, we have
questions
a
here.
new one that just came in. So let's take a look. Ooh, this is a tricky one. I don't know if Slaybot is going to recognize it. It is a partner badge from Salesforce.
Yeah.
So let's take a look. And it did not. It gave it a score of 93.
And that's something where I would imagine that, and let me just see, Bill, let me jump you back in here. So Bill, you still there?
I'm here.
So when we were seeing those, a lot of text, that's something that I remember we worked with, which was like, we think that logos look like logos. If it's got a lot of text, it might not be a logo. Is that kind of that's one of the things that we trained against. So
exactly. Yeah, so the idea is if an image has a lot of text in it, it might be important. So we kind of want a logo, obviously get rid of it. But like if it's a logo and then something important, maybe it's something more useful. Yep.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you, Bill. All right, let me just jump back into some of the questions. These are some questions that we anticipated people asking us. First thing, does Slaybot run in the background? The answer is no, it does not run in the background. It runs inside the component on the page. So when you load that record with the component on it, Slaybot then runs its code, acts as basically as an assistant to the human, does the slaying for you, which is, it's a really nice, efficient way to do it. This way, if you get tons of cases that are coming in all the time, they're not getting caught up in a queue where Slaybot has to look at everything before it passes them and creates the new case or do anything that way. So it's not running in the background. Second question, does Slaybot use Einstein or make external calls? Well, we know it's not making external calls because we're packaging a model, but we're actually not using any Einstein transactions. This was another thing that when Einstein's vision library came out a number of years ago, I think it was released, and Bill, I'm going to jump you back in because I think you remember when Steve did this, but when the Einstein Vision Library first came out, I remember us making FileSlayer use it, and it was like, we knew we could do it. I remember there was like all these hot dogs and burritos that we were trying to determine what was going on. So this definitely does not use Einstein, correct?
Correct. We were originally playing with Einstein, but we ultimately wound up with a solution that runs client side, namely ML5.js.
Do you think it's also fair that this was going to take FileSlayer was going to be a huge hit to the number of transactions, where the way we did it, there's no transaction limit because it's just running its processor limit in Salesforce?
Yep. Yeah, it's the beauty of running client side.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Nice. Help me clarify some things for everybody. So another question, this comes up. Does Slaybot work with retroactive search? Well, yes. If you have retroactive search turned on, Slaybot's adding that file to the hit list. So if Slaybot sees a file, says that should be slayed, adds it to the hit list, retroactive search will then look at it and go, there's a new file on the hit list. Let's go looking for it. So retroactive search will keep running retroactive search the way that it always has. Slaybot will just add things for that retroactive search, which means if you're going to train your end users how to deal with things, if Slaybot slays a file and then you say, whoops, it got it wrong, your end user should say, don't slay this. Because if you leave it alone and that's an important file, then FileSlayer will go through the rest of the org and find those retroactive versions of that file to slay them. Again, this is part of that. With great power comes great responsibility. We have to kind of even some things out. If you're nervous, you might want to enable Slaybot and maybe turn off retroactive removal. Personally, I don't think you need to do that. I think we've got it set here. We wouldn't have released it if we thought there was any danger there. But certainly I would want to make sure that you do test that to make sure that you don't have any unintended consequences, so on and so forth. And then this was asked a little bit earlier, but I'll follow up on that. Are there plans to add Slaybot to the hit list manager? Yes, there are definitely plans, he says, forward-looking statement. There are plans for that. We want to make sure that we do it in a very responsible way, because theoretically, instead of Slaybot sort of working per record at sort of a nice sort of measurable pace, it's got a much more aggressive task to take on. And we want to make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences there. Let's see here. Oh, this is a good question, Bill. I'm going to bring you back on because I think you can answer this accurately. Is there any lag while it retroactively removes the files?
I would say it would be the same as current retroactive removal works, because again, like Slaybot is just sort of a layer on top. So once the file is removed, then the retroactive removal, if I recall correctly, runs in a future. So yeah, there might be like a small delay. I'd have to double check that, but it's not long if there is a delay.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. Thank you, Bill. And one more question before we dive into pricing. Does Slaybot have a separate kilobyte or megabyte limit, or does it follow the FileSlayer settings? The answer is it follows the FileSlayer settings. Just very straightforward. It's whatever you have set in FileSlayer, that's what Slaybot is going to look at. It's based, as Bill said, it is acting like the human. It's just being an assistive technology. So let's talk about pricing. Pricing, this always comes up. So if you're an existing client, it's included. FileSlayer includes Slaybot with its core functionality. You will just need to update to the latest version of FileSlayer on the App Exchange, which I believe is 3.11. Is that correct? I think that's our...
That is correct, yes.
Awesome. That is our latest version there, which is pretty great. And for new clients of FileSlayer available on the App Exchange, it starts at $32.75 for new clients, which includes 25 licenses and guided configuration. And you would talk to your account or your app advisor, account executive, to give you a personalized quote. Don't ask me about that personalized quote. I do not do that part of the business, but I will make sure that you're in good hands with someone from our app advisor team to make sure that that is there. So we are running up on a little bit of time. That's all me. I got to be long-winded today. But what's really, really important to us all of the time is we want to make sure that we are getting feedback. So if you want to schedule time, just go to ic.force.com/product feedback, and that will schedule some time with myself and Thais, and we'll talk to you about different things with the products. Also, very importantly, and I need to throw both of these things in the chat like right now, very, very important. Let's do link number 1 into the chat here, because, you know, there is that. Throw that in there. I want to make sure that you also join our group on the Trailblazer community. This is something where if you're not already in this group, you should definitely be in this group. It certainly makes things, I don't want to say better and easier for everyone involved, but we post a lot of things there. We keep it pretty free from any weirdness or any kind of like shameless marketing there. We're just pretty much like, these are our apps and we love it. So we hope that you join the group there and schedule some time with us. What I want to do is there's a couple more questions that have come in that I want to address and work out there, but I'm going to get to that question section in a second here. App support for our existing clients. If you don't know, just go to support.vicasso.com. On our websites, there's chat available on any of our sites. You can send an email to support@vicasso.com or call us. If you call us, we'll be confused, but nonetheless, we'll still make sure that we get your query to where it needs to go. Also, if you are going to Dreamforce, the team at Vicasso is going to be there with a space, and we want to send you details for that. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that you have that link to schedule a time with us, and drop that in the chat there for you. But you can schedule a time, talk to the people, get demos of our products, talk to our professional services team. And with that, I'm going to open things up for just some last questions before we wrap up. Good question. The question was, are there any plans for us to go have a file size beyond 100K? Bill, I am going to ask you the question about the 100K. Why do we have the 100K limit in FileSlayer?
It's a combination of things. One of them being that like most logos and things that we want to slay are relatively small, and the other one is to avoid like heap limits and such when generating the file hash. So it's technical and practical. Can we bump it up? Maybe a smidgen. We'd have to do some testing with that, but it's not currently planned to my knowledge. However, that doesn't mean we can't explore it.
And is it fair to say that like on inbound, this is really important? So when a new case is created with a whole bunch of files attached to it, if we bump that up, that's where we would have the problems. It's less so much a component issue. It's more of the inbound processing issue.
Yeah, because it's true. We could do some stuff front end on the component. I don't believe we currently do, but it's right now we reuse the same code on the back end, so it does the same stuff, whether it's being processed in the email or in the component.
I also look at it this way. It's hard enough to get people. It's really hard to get people to understand why those settings are there. That if we had different settings on inbound in the component, if we had lots of different settings that way, it might actually create more confusion than it really gained in that extra processing. So very cool. Thank you, Bill. I'm checking the chat just to see if there's any other quick questions there. I don't see any other questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say thank you to everybody. I really appreciate everyone being here. This has been great. Thanks for joining us on this live stream. These are a lot of fun. Let us know if you need any help with this, and we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.